That's probably why you need training, is to find the time. Because if you don't have time for training, you don't have time for cross-selling. You don't have time for renewal or review calls. You don't have time for all the follow-ups on sales. The time has very little to do with training and more to do with, well, what are we doing and how can we organize an agency? I think a lot of times agencies shy away from training because there's no time. Maybe the agency leadership has no time to coordinate the training. Maybe the team is so backlogged they think the training won't go there. Or I hear a lot of times too, well, we've all veterans. I was just in a room full of veterans last week, and some of the things we were talking about, they were just doing so traditionally, even to the point of headsets. This is one of my favorite things in the world. And I don't know why this happens, but I'll say, okay, we want to practice first call resolution to save you time, to be efficient. You do everything one and done. You're off the phone. You're on to the next thing. And inevitably, a lot of people won't wear headsets, or they don't. And the first thing is, I don't like the way it feels. And I'm always like, question, just a quick question. So if you don't like the way that looks or feels, if I can ask you a question, how often have you used one? And they're like, never. Like, okay, cool. So when we're thinking about making time for training, there's a lot of inefficiencies in agencies, but there's a lot of pushback because I could sit at my desk and be miserable, or I could learn something new. And for so many people, the idea of learning something new, they think they've learned everything. Now, I read a book, usually 1 to 2 books a month at least. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm learning something new every day. So I find it hard to believe that a 25, 30-year-old veteran in the industry can't learn anything new. I think it's don't want to. So let's talk about how do we find time for training. A couple things I think are important. Using I call them the bonus days. If your agency doesn't close for like Veterans Day or Columbus Day or a President's Day, these are days that you could easily close to the public and do training. Another opportunity is staff meetings. Why does a staff meeting have to be about what carrier updates are? Why couldn't it be 30 minutes of a training of some kind? Another one is giving everybody a training plan and saying, this is my objective. You need to complete this by Friday, and here's the scoop. And you have to hold people accountable. And that's something that we kind of struggle with in insurance agencies. But I struggle with not training people because so many of the issues we see is we don't know how to use the management system to the best of its ability. We only know some carriers really well. We don't know them all. And so every time we have to do something in another carrier, it's a big disaster. Or we tell people that we need them to cross-sell or retain customers, but they're not sure what to do or what to say, so everybody avoids it. And inevitably what happens in every agency is the excuse for why something doesn't get done is I didn't have any time. But I would say, no, the reason is you never communicated you didn't have any time, and we're finding it out now. When training comes into play, it helps clear out some of those boundaries. So I always kind of laugh when people say I don't have time for training. I say, that's probably why you need training, is to find the time. Because if you don't have time for training, you don't have time for cross-selling. You don't have time for renewal or review calls. You don't have time for all the follow-ups on sales. The time has very little to do with training and more to do with, well, what are we doing and how can we organize an agency? When people say, I don't have time, we have to make time. I stress this because consulting companies like mine and insurance agencies are strikingly similar business formats. If my biggest expense is payroll and your biggest expense is payroll, my biggest objective every day is how do I get an ROI on that investment of payroll? And an untrained team is costing us money. And it's costing us time and effort and energy and customer experience. And so if I'm going to pay people a certain amount, I think it's so critical that at that point in time, it converts into the next step, which is an ROI and the best trained team on the planet. So if there is no time, you got to make time, you got to find time, and you got to believe in training to get there.